Isn't that great? Just at any given time, you can just kill 400 civilians in an hour. In an hour. Like when this launch started last night, around 7 p.m. our time, I remember being like, oh my fucking God. We're about, it's going to happen. In like probably half an hour, all of social media is going to be flooded with children's bodies. And surely enough, within an hour, it was flooded with dead kids. Just unbelievable sights of horrifying atrocities, burnt corpses, mangled faces, innards, guts, just the horrifying shit that, like, you know, that I guess like most people were trying to push into other parts of our brain to try and manage the day-to-day. But no, there it was, all once again, as the massacres continued. And yeah, what can you even say at this point? People are obviously going insane for witnessing this, like the worst forms of humanity, and choosing, I guess, to just get mad at people who are not responsible. Like, you know, it's pretty infuriating to see people who consider themselves, I guess, to be liberals or to be against this, I assume, but then posting shit like, this makes me so furious at everyone who didn't vote for Harris and Biden. I'm so mad at you because, like, you allowed this to happen. And then it's like, I don't know. I think it's probably more fair to be mad at Joe Biden for fueling and funding the genocide and putting people in a hopeless position, people who have no power, in a situation where they felt they didn't want to vote for the administration doing the genocide. That whole thing. That would be probably who I'd want to be more mad at than people whose families were getting massacred and, you know, they couldn't bring themselves to support the Democrats, thinking of the whole lesser of two evils shit. I don't know when liberals are going to realize that or make the calculation that, yeah, a lot less people showed up for this election. And that's one of the reasons why the narrow victories in the swing states that Donald Trump won, it wasn't a landslide. He didn't absolutely destroy and crush Kamala, but, you know, enough people didn't show up between the last election and that election. Could be in large part due to the uninspiring reality of just witnessing dead kids every day. That doesn't really get people energized and galvanized and ready to go vote for that administration, thinking, hey, this is still gonna, it's gonna be harm reduction, even though the harm seems pretty severe in both directions. But the good old harm reduction is the way forward. It's like, at this point, the mythos of the liberal world order has been so effectively destroyed, especially for millennials down to Gen Zs, that look at the support the Democrats currently have, because so many of them are not built for this moment. So many of them are just fucking corporate executives, you know, corporate executives who've been taking endless amounts of money in the form of lobbying and super PACs for so fucking long that when a moment like this happens, where you're seeing the rise of far-right fascistic powers in Donald Trump and his administration, and them now starting to erode the Constitution of the United States and upend any chance of having democracy into the future, they're sitting there talking about how we need to fundraise and we're going to get them in the midterms. Oh, you wait. And yes, we need to help them and pass the budget and sign off on it, because if we don't do that, then the government shuts down, and heaven forbid the government shuts down while the government is effectively transforming into a fascist state before our eyes. We can't shut it down. We need to keep it open so we can fight. We will win. We will win. And wow, your support is what, plummeting to 27% right now, amongst the lowest it's been in my lifetime. Are any of you surprised? And those are the people who are at least posturing. Those are the people who are at least fucking making statements and coming forward and being like, hey, by the way, here's what we're doing. There's other people who at this time right now are just being fucking full blown, we need to go more to the right. And then there's articles being published in Politico and multiple other fucking, political journals talking about how, yes, to meet the moment right now, we need to drop LGBTQ plus rights. We need to stop talking about civil rights. We need to stop standing up for humanity. And we need to circumvent this by going even further to the right. If we become diet Republicans, then surely people will realize that we're available. You know, if you want us to do horrifying things too, we're just right here, you know. Republicans already have what they want. and they're already getting what they want, and MAGA's already getting what they want, and that it seems to be blood, destruction, and violence, and they don't need the light version of that, and you're never going to appeal to them, and you alienate anyone who might otherwise support you in the process. It's just didn't work in that last election. Were you there? Abject failure. What about the one before that? Hillary Clinton? Did that work when she was trying to circumvent the right by being more right? I'm way tougher on the borders. I'm way tougher on Libya. I will fucking bomb the fuck out of those countries. Do you trust me? I am law and order. Law and order, baby. Here we go. Compare that to fucking, what was Obama's message? Hope. Change. Hope. Change. Oh, okay. Ooh, inspiring. He didn't deliver it. I'll grant you that. But it sure feels good. Feels better than fucking, yeah, I'm better than them on the whole angry stuff. I'm better than them at violence, you know? Like, God damn it. Netanyahu's office sent a statement posted on social media that the Israeli military launched a large-scale strike due to Hamas's repeated refusal to release the hostages, as well as the rejection of all the proposals that it received from U.S. presidential envoy Steve Witkoff and from the mediators. Hamas responded that Israel is fully responsible for violating and overturning the agreement. Even before this happened, they were not honoring it, either in Gaza or, like, you're supposed to sit there as a Palestinian and watch them snipe children in the West Bank every day and be like, it doesn't count. We did not violating the ceasefire. We may have, yes, shot a 12-year-old in the face, but he was throwing rocks. You got to take it. Got to sit back and watch another kid get fucking shot in the face. Sorry, that's just how it is. If you do anything to retaliate, then you violated the ceasefire, all right? And so we will continue to shoot children in the face, and you just have to sit there and watch. And Hamas are the bad guys. They're the terrorists. Just keep that in mind. Israeli strikes came over after a month after the Trump administration approved a $7.4 billion sale of U.S. weaponry to Israel, which has repeatedly used American arms to commit war crimes in Gaza. So every single day that, you're an American and you don't have health care, or life sucks, or the cost of groceries are high, or your roads don't work, or your bridges just collapse, you might be thinking, wonder if any of that $7.4 billion or any of the other hundreds of billions of dollars that we've been given to Israel, or selling weapons to Israel, or just doing all this fucking stuff on the behalf of Israel so it can commit genocide and do war crimes, if any of that could have been used on Americans, on improving the quality of our lives, instead of making babies explode. I get it. America just really, really wants to have children explode in Gaza. It seems to be something that is of the top priority. Always money, more money for that. No, never-ending funds. It's just like, hey, you want to cut a blank fucking check? You want kids to die? You want them to die horribly? You want them to burn to death? You want the skin to fucking melt off their flesh? Yeah, we got money for that. We got hundreds of billions of dollars to make sure that just keeps on happening all the time. But hey, did you want roads? Did you want hospitals? Did you want infrastructure? Did you want schools? Nope. No, that all has to be gutted. We got Doge. We got fucking everything being withdrawn, restricted. We're not even going to help other countries anymore. We're not even going to do the soft power thing. We're going to let people starve in other nations, and we're going to let all of that kind of, fuck it. It's all going to one country right now. This return to violence does not come as a surprise, however. Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu has, from the beginning, signaled his intention to abandon the ceasefire process before it become a lasting peace. From before his first day in office, President Trump endorsed the Netanyahu government's return to war. Indeed, we fear Trump's vile plan for ethnic cleansing in Gaza, so welcomed by the far-right members of Netanyahu's government. And it's not just America, by the way. Canada. Shame on all of us. Shame on every fucking one of us. What was the last thing that Trudeau did before he left office? I am a proud Zionist, and there's nothing wrong with saying that you are a proud Zionist. Every Canadian should be proud. Fuck you. Honestly, fuck that scumfuck who's now posting pictures trying to be all cute, like, oh, look at me in Canadian Tire. Look, I'm retired. I'm doing a Canadian thing. I've got my Timmy hose. I'm fucking buying tires at Canadian Tire. Monsters, all of them. Keir Starmer in England, he's supporting this. Emmanuel Macron supporting this. Every single one of them is supporting this. The ones who try to get away with it, who are trying to rewrite history, who are being like, oh yes, well, by the way, we were putting a pause on some of the weapon shipments. Well, we do have a one-way arms embargo, so teehee, one-way arms embargo, that counts, right? No, it fucking doesn't. Any country that would be doing this in another context, especially if it was considered an enemy nation to the West, Like, how long would this be tolerated for? We would be well beyond sanctions. There would be calls for an invasion. This country has to be stopped. It is a military superpower at this point, being backed by the world's largest military superpower that is engaged in the endless torture and murder of children. Are we just going to sit back and watch this? Or we just, we're going to sit back and support it and just give it all the bombs that it needs to keep killing kids? Let's do that. Every day, let's just keep doing that and do that with a smile on our faces while we posture and pretend that we're the good fucking guys. We are the fucking the depravity, the absolute depths of human depravity right now. The West, the neoliberal world order, we are fucking disgusting. Disgusting. Anyone who has not sanctioned Israel, anyone who has not done a two-way arms embargo on Israel, anyone who is not treating Israel at this point like an enemy fucking nation has blood on their hands. Absolute, without question. That includes Canada. That includes the United States, obviously, but that includes a lot of the fucking West who just keep sitting back and being like, they are an important ally. It's the only democracy in the Middle East. We need to keep on reframing this. We need to keep on talking about this. I mean, at the end of the day, Hamas is a terrorist organization, and they have to be stopped. They're bad guys. They're terrorists. Do you not understand how they're bad guys? What is Israel then? Like I think that's the question everyone has to ask themselves. What is Israel if Hamas is considered this ultimate evil, and every day you wake up and it's like another 400 people just got murdered in an hour, the majority of them kids, burnt to death? Who's the bad guy here?
With Hamas. Okay, wait, so not only did Israel violate the ceasefire, but in doing so, they killed 9 people. Why is this mass killing event being downgraded to simply an attack in the headline? A non-ceasefire violating attack at that? Since the ceasefire went into effect in mid-January, the military has conducted constant strikes in Gaza. Israel has accused militants of threatening its forces by laying explosive devices, flying drones, or by approaching where Israeli troops are deployed. Hamas has claimed those attacks have killed more than 150 people since the truce took effect, at least some of them civilians. And it has accused Israel of repeatedly violating the agreement by continuing military operations. So this is a good example of kind of one of the central issues in this coverage, which is that the claims from both Hamas and Israel are being given the same weight in this debate going on in the article, but only one of the figures cited here can actually be confirmed. When Hamas claims that 150 people have been killed, this is a statement of fact. Israel has killed over 150 Palestinians, the vast majority of whom are civilians, including a number of children. We have the names, the video and photographic evidence of their killings, and the medical records. When Israel says that its troops were threatened, Israel provides no evidence for this claim, and yet the New York Times reports it as if it's on par with the claims made by Hamas, claims which have evidentiary backing. On Saturday, the Israeli military said it struck 2 militants who were operating a drone that posed a threat, and then struck a vehicle carrying others who had arrived to collect the drone operating equipment. It did not elaborate on how they posed a threat to Israeli troops. Oh, okay. Well, this would be good to lead with, I think, the fact that Israel gave no evidence or even explanation as to why they killed 9 Palestinians with an airstrike during a ceasefire. Ismail Thawabte, the Director General of the Hamas-controlled government media office in Gaza, said the 9 Palestinians killed in the strike were working for a charity. The identities and statuses of those killed could not be independently verified. So when Palestinians report evidence, the New York Times makes sure to designate their status as a Hamas-controlled, Hamas being a U.S.-designated terrorist organization, mind you. Terrorists are controlling this government media office, that's the implication whenever they use this label, and that nothing can be verified independently. The IDF is, of course, absent from the U.S. list of terrorist organizations, despite its many terrorist actions. That's because the U.S. makes the list, and the U.S. and Israel are the good guys, according to the U.S. and Israel. So that takes care of that double standard there, but the independent verification on their claims goes unmentioned. Interesting. The Israeli military said earlier on Saturday that it had struck 3 militants in central Gaza who were attempting to install explosive devices on the ground near Israeli soldiers. Officials in the Gaza Health Ministry did not respond to requests for comment. The steady drumbeat of Israeli strikes is a reminder that while Israel and Hamas have reached an agreement that paused most of the fighting in Gaza, a comprehensive truce is still nowhere in sight. In Lebanon, Israel is conducting a similar aerial campaign against the Lebanese armed group Hezbollah, Gaza, a Hamas ally, during the U.S.-brokered ceasefire there, saying Israeli forces are attacking sites and operatives that have breached the agreement. So the exception to the rule of, quote, most of the fighting being paused in Gaza is the steady drumbeat of Israeli strikes. Why is the steady drumbeat of Israeli strikes not the focus of this article? What a poetic way to describe something that must certainly be in violation of a ceasefire, right? Steady drumbeat? The war in Gaza began after Hamas's deadly October 7th attack on southern Israel, which killed about 1,200 people, mostly civilians, according to Israel's government. About 250 others were taken back to Gaza as hostages. The New York Times, as most Western outlets do, choose to start the clock on this war on October 7th of 2023. Did anything happen before that could have led to the conditions that may have led to such an attack? Or any other options explored, perhaps even nonviolent ones by the people who undertook it to alleviate said conditions? What happened in the preceding 70 years? Was there a brutal occupation and a repeated campaigns of ethnic cleansing, a medieval siege controlling everything that goes in and out of the Gaza Strip, repeated high-tech massacres of innocent civilians in Gaza, massacres Israel itself refers to as mowing the lawn? Is any of that relevant? Who knows? Definitely not the New York Times. Israel's subsequent military campaign against Hamas has killed more than 48,000 people, including thousands of children, according to the Gaza Health Ministry.
Which, by the way, excellent work by Noah as always, but like that's one of the reasons why I was saying earlier that it's like it's not enough to keep doing the both sides shit. The both sides shit, when this is so disproportionate and grotesque, is just 100% doing propaganda for Israel. Like, that's all you're doing. Like, I'm sorry, there's no good liberal take where you get to be like, oh, yes, but we need to contextualize this. At the end of the day, do you condemn Hamas? And at the end of the day, have we spoken about all the sexual assault that occurred on October 7th and all the beheaded babies and all the other things? Like, what are we doing here? You just you want to be like, oh, I'm having the rational take. We have to have a nuance. Have you heard of the word nuanced? We need to do a nuanced discussion of genocide. All right, that's what this calls for us to do, the nuanced thing on genocide. And it's like, no, you can't both sides this genocide. You can't do that. There's, without question, an occupation. There's a counting of calories. There is a limit of all the food, water, supplies that go into that area. There is the mass massacre of children, of men and women who are non-combatants. We're talking civilians who are dying in the hundreds of fucking thousands. And those are people who are being starved and bombed to death. You can't sit there and be like, but they did fire the rocket and shot out by the technology of the Iron Dome. But I mean, if Hamas didn't want this to happen to them, why would they fire rockets? If Hamas didn't want this to happen to them, why would they do October 7th? This is Hamas doing it to themselves. It's, hey, I'm nuanced. I have nuance on this topic, so I just want to tell you all that as a nuanced person with a lot of nuance to bring to the discussion of genocide, I do feel at this point that it's sad. My heart aches. It aches when I hear of the death of any child. It doesn't matter who they are, but ultimately this is Hamas's fault. Like, if they didn't want this, they shouldn't have done October 7th. That's all I'm saying.
Figures do not distinguish between civilians and combatants, and the Israeli military claims to have, quote, eliminated nearly 20,000 Hamas operatives. So this is just straight up IDF propaganda right here. Weighing these claims against one another as even remotely comparable is IDF propaganda. There's no other way of putting it. The Israeli attacks in Gaza are characterized by an extremely high civilian casualty ratio in comparison with other armed conflicts in the last decades. As of January 2025, 15 months into the attacks, over 46,000 persons have been killed by Israeli forces in Gaza. Some 24,000 out of the 40,000 who have been identified are women, children, and older persons, making almost 59% of the identified fatalities. While the estimated number of combatants killed by the ISF varies, there is no doubt that civilians comprise the vast majority of the persons killed since the Israeli attacks began. According to a United States intelligence assessment from May 2024, Palestinian armed groups have lost 30 to 35% of their fighters in Gaza since October 2023. The commission therefore estimates.
I appreciate Noah getting in on the fight on this. He has been for a long time. Noah's like one of the few people who has been making consistent videos on this. I mean, the handful of other content producers have, but there's also just been a huge deafening silence from like a lot of the biggest ones. Like I don't I don't want to see you know, is Nietzsche MAGA video right now. I want to see, is Benjamin Netanyahu a war criminal? Yes. You know, I want to see a fucking a measured response on Israeli war crimes. Like, they're what is the point of building up all of these massive channels and accounts and all this kind of stuff if it's not going to be used when like an actual genocide is taking place before your eyes? It is kind of like the fucked up thing about all of it.
The death toll of Hamas and other armed groups has between 6,000 and 14,000, given an estimated strength of about 20 to 40,000 militants prior to October 2023. One report estimated that 8,500 militants were killed. The ISF claimed in October 2024 that it had killed about 17,000 Hamas operatives and members of other armed groups. Given that the number of adult male fatalities since October 7th has been around 16,000, this would mean that the ISF considers all adult male Palestinians in Gaza to be members of armed groups and so legitimate targets. So even if the total number of male deaths were 16,000, 4,000 less than what the New York Times is so graciously quoting the...
Ethan said it's Hassan and all the other people causing the Palestinian flight. Like, I'm sure there's already probably an Ethan video on this, but that goes down to the whole thing with that ecosystem of, you know, Hutch, Epstein, Ethan Klein. Every single one of them just cannot stop the Hassan bad. And yeah, well, how dare Noah make a video about people who are apparently, you know, promoting the genocide of Palestinians. Like, they've never once said that they're pro-genocide. You know, Mudahar never said that. He just basically, you know, watched the content nuke, promoted the content nuke, and basically talked about how Hassan was platforming as a terrorist, and how, you know, it's really good that Ethan has a nuanced take on this, which is that he doesn't want Palestinians to suffer, and it's too bad, but at the end of the day, Hamas is a terrorist organization, and they obviously, they themselves are genocidal. I mean, it was baked into the original fabric of their constitution, wasn't it, or something? I haven't seen the new one lately, but who cares? All of that is important, and we need to make sure that we stop the most evil man possible who's operating today, Hassan Piker. Because he platformed Timothy Chalamet or Huth Chalamet or whatever, and because of that, he apparently hates America, and he hates Jewish people, and he's anti-Semitic, and he's unwilling to see the light and agree with us that we should all have nuance. Why don't we have nuance on this topic? Why doesn't anyone have nuance? It's just all, it's all so extreme. Everyone is so intense when they talk about this thing.
The IDF is saying, it still means that there are no innocent men in Gaza. The IDF has repeatedly egregiously lied about the ratios of combatants to civilians killed. The evidence we do have, far from being the most moral army in the world, it's like the least moral army in the world by a long shot, the army that committed and is currently committing genocide. That's another thing that goes completely unmentioned in this article, is the whole genocide thing. Who cares about that, though? That's just a bunch of independent human rights organizations. The only credible sources on the matter are the IDF, I guess. There's certainly no conflict of interest there in citing them. Israeli leaders say they will not end the war against Hamas until they topple the group's rule in Gaza and the territory no longer poses a threat to Israel. Hamas has shown some willingness to give up civilian governance in Gaza, but has drawn a red line on disbanding its battalions of armed fighters. How rude of them to refuse to disband their military capabilities. It's not like that's some recognized right under international law for an occupied group of people. Dicks. Israel and Hamas are supposed to be negotiating the next steps in the ceasefire agreement, which would involve a permanent end to the war, the release of the remaining living hostages, and a full withdrawal of Israeli forces from Gaza. Mediators, including the United States, Qatar, and Egypt, have made little headway so far, given the entrenched disagreements between the two sides. Yeah, entrenched disagreements. Both sides have those for sure. Could there be any valid reasons for disagreement among one of the two parties? Perhaps the violations of the ceasefire that you just spent an entire article describing, could that have anything to do with these alleged disagreements from both sides? I legitimately cannot read the New York Times without getting really angry and writing a script about it. Israeli forces remain deployed in a buffer zone inside Gaza and along the Philadelphia corridor, which runs along Gaza's border with Egypt. Under the terms of the ceasefire, Israel was supposed to have withdrawn from the Philadelphia corridor by mid-March. Oh, that's good. Thanks for the heads up. So they also are violating the ceasefire in another way, on top of the steady drumbeat of attacks. Thanks for letting us know, I guess, at the very last sentence of the article. Really cool. So what do we notice from this article article here. Overall, it's just a masterclass in manufacturing consent. The New York Times passively reports clear evidence of Israel's ceasefire violations while weighing them against Israel's unverifiable defenses with long histories of fabrication and falsehood. The New York Times offers a disgustingly passive and vague recounting of the numbers, names, and circumstances surrounding the Palestinian deaths. The death toll of over 150 Palestinians includes many children, such as Ahmad Abed, a 7-year-old Palestinian boy that was killed just days ago. Crucially, though, the article makes no mention of Israel's complete blockage on humanitarian aid from entering Gaza. On March 15th, the day that this article was published, Israel had completely blocked any entry of humanitarian aid into Gaza for over 2 weeks. 2 straight weeks of no food, no water, no supplies, no housing, a recent total halt on any electricity, all of these restrictions calculated to bring about the suffering and destruction of this group of people, and all of them in direct violation of the ceasefire agreement, international law, and the ICJ's provisional measures issued against Israel to prevent the crime of genocide from taking place. To the New York Times, none of this is important. The fact that 6 babies have frozen to death due to the harsh conditions, lack of fuel, and lack of housing.
It's not just the New York Times, by the way. Same thing with the CBC in Canada, and that one is especially egregious to me because, I mean, that is literally funded by our tax dollars if you're Canadian. But yeah, they've had the same problem, as have most major news networks and most media sources when it comes to this topic. You know, at the best, you might be hoping for passive voice or something to that effect, or it's just going to be like discounting the actual crimes and atrocities that are taking place, or it always has to be recontextualized. You'll always see the very first and the very last paragraph, like, this war began on October 7th, when the terrorist organization Hamas committed vile atrocities and murdered the largest amount of Jewish people since the Holocaust. You know, it's always got to start with that, and then it goes on, and it is obviously quite sad that, you know, so there has been some loss of life on both sides. It's like some loss of life. I mean, you know, the conservative estimates were 150,000 before all of this ramped up once again. You know, before Israel once again was like, you know what, we're cutting it all off again. All the food, all the water, everything. The electricity too. Yep. And yeah, we're just gonna bomb everywhere now. Not just like one area. There's not going to be safe zones. There's not going to be designated zones. You should go here. You should go there. We're bombing everywhere. Just a complete and total assault with the approval of Donald Trump and his administration, who are like, yep, yeah, no. I mean, how else are we going to turn it into a casino resort? The only way to do that, and effectively do that, because the United States apparently under Donald Trump wants to turn it into the Riviera, the only way to do that is just to keep showing people how bad it is. Oh, look how terrible it is there. Look how much they're suffering. Look how bad this is. Yeah, I mean, we should really open up some kind of a corridor so they can just go to a different part of the world, right? We just kind of maybe cleanse them and their ethnicity from that region to a different region and just move them all, and then we can rebuild it as a casino resort and you know, have a permanent U.S. military base there as well. I mean, it should all just happen within the next couple of years. We'll see.
All a direct result of Israel's aid blockage, completely man-made deaths. All of that is unimportant to the New York Times. To end this video today, I want to turn briefly to the newspaper Haaretz. Haaretz is the Israeli paper of record, and Haaretz is weird because a lot of their coverage is as bad or worse than the New York Times in terms of caping for Israel's genocide. But of late, their coverage has been quite direct and honest, much more than anything you'll see in the West. That isn't saying much, but let's just read to get an idea. Article headline: 9 killed in Israeli airstrikes in Gaza, including journalists, Palestinian medics say. Right away, wow, okay, look at this. 9 killed in not just attacks, but Israeli airstrikes. They're naming the perpetrator. The victims include journalists, a claim made by the source of Palestinian medics. That's crazy. They didn't call them U.S. terrorist-designated Hamas-run health ministry operatives or whatever. They just said Palestinian medics. How refreshing. The IDF said it targeted a terrorist cell operating a drone that was threatening Israeli forces, while local media outlets in Gaza reported that the victims were journalists using a drone to film humanitarian aid. Even the simple choice of what order to place those sources and quotes in does something, right? Contrasting the IDF's claim with the many sources in Gaza with no conflict of interest, unlike the IDF, makes the summary of the situation a little more honest, I think. Israeli airstrikes in the Gaza Strip on Saturday killed at least 9 people, including 3 local journalists, according to Palestinian medics. The death toll represents the highest highest number of casualties in a single day since the ceasefire between Israel and Hamas began in January. The IDF said 2 of the victims were operating a drone that posed a threat to the soldiers. The other victims, according to the Army's statement, were gathering the gear left over on the ground. They go on to quote the IDF's miraculous revelation that every single person that they killed, including the multiple journalists, were actually covert, undercover terrorist operatives. It's far from the first time they've had such miraculous revelations post-journalist murdering. The Palestinian Journalist Protection Center in Gaza said that the victims were journalists using a drone to film humanitarian aid. The organization said in a statement that the targeting of journalists prevents the world from being exposed to the truth about what is happening in Gaza, and called on the international community.
Matt Lieb is also a very good voice right now. Oh, he's incredible. Completely 100% recommend listening to Bad Hasbara. If you are a Patreon supporter of Bad Hasbara, my episode actually where I guest starred is up there. I don't know when it's going up on the YouTubes though. I can't say to that. Actually, I saw a post the other day by Gritty is the Way that spoke to this because I'm not Jewish myself, but I thought this was a really good statement. Being a Jew in America right now is so bizarre. The president's right-hand man endorses a far-right German party that wants to remove Holocaust memorials and ban the sale of kosher meat. Members of the ruling party are doing Nazi salutes at rallies, and standing members of Congress openly repeat conspiracy theories about the Rothschilds and Jewish space lasers. Then you see a news article about anti-Semitism, and it's like, we need to do something about all these college students protesting mass killings. And, you know, so much support for every single brave Jewish American and Jewish person internationally who is resisting the narrative that is mostly being pushed by Christian nationalists. This is the work of Christian nationalists who are consistently pushing for this weird biblical prophecy, an anti-Semitic biblical prophecy, I might add, to take place, where the chosen people have to be positioned in such a way that when Jesus returns, everything is perfectly set up for the second coming.
Community.
Don't let this happen to you. Go to serfscoffee.com to order the only end-to-end owned indigenous coffee company that delivers blood-free, conflict-free, and cruelty-free beans right to your door. 0% of people who drink serfscoffee.com have exploded spontaneously. By ordering right now, you get 10% off plus free shipping, and it's the best way to enjoy delicious coffee while not exploding. That's serfscoffee.com, serfscoffee.com.
Thank you so much for watching, everyone. This video wouldn't be at all possible without the financial support of all the people whose names you see on the screen right now. And if you want to unlock secret bonus episodes, content that we can't post anywhere else, or get the videos early before anyone else gets to see them, please go on to patreon.com/theserfs. For as little as $1, you can help support this channel and help make more videos like this possible. Our executive producers are Anna Loves Riley, Adrian McCarthy, Bobby Lasers, Cheryl Alvarez, Comrade Junkie, Doug Caddy, Everything Important, Garrett Sandoval, Hagbard Saline, Jimmy Sombrero, Multimondi, Omni, Political Papi, Preston Kroll, Quiet 185, Richard Boehm, Riley and Anna, Roller Dragon, Cernicus, Stellar Gwyn, Sebastian Demel, Tigwick, Trav, and Words Greenwood. And also, it wouldn't be possible without all the names you see on the screen right now. Again, if you want to help produce this content, it's only made possible through the funding of our patrons. Head on down to patreon.com/theserfs. That's patreon.com/theserfs.